Hello, everybody. This is Corey Funk for Funk's Film Reviews. And it's Halloween, so I'm going to talk about something that it's actually going to talk about violence in movies, some for horror movies, some not being a horror movie, and how there are some movies that are violent that I like because I actually think the violence works with the plot and it moves it forward, where others I would call gore porn, which is being violent for the sake of being violent, like style, like going for more style over substance. And that's something that always baffles me. Like, for instance, Tarantino's movies are violent, but I always feel when I watch a Quentin Tarantino movie that they have the violence working with the plot. Like in, for instance, Reservoir Dogs, it deals with a bank robbery gone wrong, and they do that Stuck in the Middle with You. That scene was incredibly violent, but I actually felt that scene, although is pretty grotesque, it didn't bug me because it worked with what the storyline was going for. But there are movies that I watch and they just, like, for instance, war movies are another ones that have the violence that work with the plot, like All Quiet on the Western Front, the 2022. My favorite film from 2022 was one that had the violence that works with. And then you have other horror movies, like sci-fi horror movies, like you look at Aliens, they have violence, but the violence works with the plot. Like the alien bursting out of the chest, it actually works with the plot. Now, one that bugs me is Terrifier. I don't like the Terrifier. I saw two of them. I haven't seen the third one. But I look at Terrifier as gore porn. And what I mean by that is it's simply trying to be vile, disgusting, and it doesn't actually work with the plot. I just find they want to go more gross, more grotesque, and keep that going. And something that always tends to bug me a little more is when they decide to go after child characters, like Art the Clown kills children. And that's another reason why a Serbian film bugged me. When it actually goes after a child and murders a child, something about that, your take going right after the most innocent. I know you're trying to make the character pure evil, but just something about Art the Clown, and I don't feel like his movies really have plot. They're simply going for how gory, how can we shock you, and it just doesn't have much plot. Where, like I said, some of these movies I'm talking about, the violence works with the films. All Quiet on the Western Front, my favorite, that would be my favorite film of 2022. Another one that works with Saving Private Ryan, which was my second favorite film from 1998, American History X being my first, but dealing with the traumas of war. That works with what it's going for. Braveheart is another one that has extreme violence, but it works. It doesn't disturb me. But I'm not saying all horror films are like that. Terrifier, the saws after the first saw. I mean, yes, the cutting off the leg, but I do get what the first saw was trying to go for. And that's why it doesn't bug me. Another one that has a lot of violent scenes, and it's three separate storylines, but it works to me, is the first Sin City movie. Is a very violent movie, but the violence actually works with it. And even Devil's Rejects being a horror film, they're psychotic killers, but I've never seen them kill a child. That's another reason why I don't mind, because Grand Theft Auto is a very violent video game. But one thing I've always respected the series for is the people you're going after, they're just random adults walking around, and yeah, you're committing crimes, but at least it would bug me if they went and decided to have random children and you could just randomly beat them up. No, I don't think that. When it goes after the most innocent, then it actually hits something to me. Same thing with a Serbian film, which was between Terrifier and a Serbian film. Those are the only movies that grossed me out to a point where it bugged me. And Yeah, but like I said, gore porn. I also feel the Saw movies after Saw 1 feel like gore porn, and Hostel feels like gore porn. But that's just me. I don't necessarily see what it is. Everybody has their preferences, and the weird thing is, I don't think these movies should be censored. I just don't like them. But I do believe in freedom of expression and freedom of speech, but it's just, if I don't like something, I won't watch it. I would not want to try to cancel it. I think that's stupid to cancel it. But it's just wasn't my cup of tea. And like Tarantino actually talks about, for instance, and he has movies, even a movie like Natural Born Killers. He written Natural Born Killers, but he actually didn't like the final product. And other people like Roger Ebert loved Natural Born Killers. And everything, like I said, is preference. And I actually thought Natural Born Killers was okay. It definitely wasn't Tarantino's best writing. The Tarantino, like, still favorite movie of all time is Pulp Fiction. That movie uses gore in such creative ways that works with the plot and such humor. Like, you shot Marvin in the face. Like, that uses it in humorous ways that I freaking love Tarantino movies for that. I absolutely love that about Tarantino movies. And same like I said, same as the Alien franchise. Halloween, another example of a horror movie that uses violence for it. And I actually feel Halloween, Laurie Strode, is kind of like another great use of a female antagonist. Now, some people, it's funny reading people complain like, oh, why aren't these, they just don't like women. Bullshit. Halloween, aliens, exact. Laurie Strode, Ellen Ripley. Go with friggin' Terminator, Sarah Connor. These are very badass women written in a very badass way. Also, Beatrix Kiddo from Kill Bill, another prime example of using a really kick-ass, but they built the characters, they gave them they built the characters, they gave them character, and when you do that, I could go Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling, my favorite female character in a movie of all time. Like, she's a badass. It's when you build the character, you don't make them into a Mary Sue. You don't make you have to. I feel that you have to build character and try to build them relatable, not all of a sudden hand this stuff. That's why Captain Marvel was so stupid. Sorry, I didn't mind. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a rarity, and yeah, I know the actual Taskmaster villain was originally a guy, but I didn't mind Black Widow. I'm a rarity. That's one that, but it's not really one of the violent films I'm talking about or anything like that. It was just me getting into female characters, how they can be badass. You write characters, you don't hand them the powers. You make it's the same thing with guys, both women and men. You can't hand them their powers. You have to build these characters and make them look like they worked for it. And the character, your main character has to, I feel your main character should always have to earn your respect. And you have to somehow feel that you might know these people, or these people could be relatable. And yeah, you can make them badasses, but it's got to feel like they worked for it. Like, I think that's why a lot of people don't like the new Star Wars trilogy. The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Sky. I didn't mind Force Awakens. I didn't like the other two. But they almost, like, they gave Daisy Ridley's characters the power right away. She didn't really have to. When she fought, she was a challenge for Kylo Ren. And a lot of people didn't buy that. And I think that's where the new Star Wars trilogy, episodes 7, 8, and 9, fell flat. That's me. But yeah, when I was getting back to violent characters or violent movies, and they can be great, but they have to feel like they earn your. The violence got to feel earned, and it's got to move with the plot. Another prime example of a great violent movie that I actually like watching on Halloween, and it's one of my favorite films from the year 1992, is Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Uses the violence in a way that it works with the storyline. But yeah, that's kind of what I want to talk about, is violent movies and how certain violent movies work and certain ones don't. At least for me, you don't have to agree with me like at all. That's the beautiful thing, is people could agree to disagree. But yeah, that's why I'm not necessarily Terrifier, Saw, well, after Saw 1. Saw 2, 3, and 4, all those other ones. Wasn't really my thing. Hostel, but I did like the first Saw. A Serbian film. Serbian film was probably my most disturbing movie I've ever seen, but those Cannibal Holocaust, another example of a movie that just seems violent for the sake of being violent. And just, yeah. And you don't have to agree with me, like I said. But yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. And I'm going to talk about my top 5 movies I like to watch on Halloween. Some might be horror, some might be comedy, but they kind of have a feel of Halloweenish things. And that's why I'm going to put my top 5 favorite movies I love watching during the spooky season. Number 5, I will do, this one's not a violent movie, this one is Henry Selick. A lot of people, Henry Selick directed this, not Tim Burton. Some people forget about that. Danny Elfman did the singing parts. Chris Sarandon did the actual voice parts. And that is Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare Before Christmas actually works to me as both a Halloween and a Christmas movie. You could watch them on both holidays and it feels great. So yeah, that, number 5. Number 4, I still have to watch the sequel to this. And I always dread sequels, but I've actually heard decent things about it. But it's Michael Keaton, Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin, who are actually not in this one. Winona Ryder's back in this one. Also, Winona Ryder's back in the sequel, not in the original. Catherine O'Hara, Jeffrey Jones, a guy that is rotting in prison and should be for, it's disgusting shit. But I'm going to say that movie is called Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is my number 4. Number 3. Now, the new one, this remake, is absolute garbage. It's my worst film so far of 2024. But the original was in my top 10 with Rest in Peace Brandon Lee. Also had Ernie Hudson. And yeah, this one was about a couple that died, and then the guy comes back to life and hunts the murderers that killed him and his loved one, and a crow brings him back to life. The movie's called The Crow. It has such a Halloween feel to it, and it's actually a beautifully gothic movie. And The Crow, the 1994 Alex Proyas one, is my number 3. My number 2, I actually mentioned this one for being violent and actually working, and it's directed by my 3rd favorite director of all time. Wasn't a big fan of the new movie of his at Megalopolis, which I really wanted to like it because I loved Francis Ford Coppola's work back from The Godfather 2, The Conversation, Rumblefish, Apocalypse Now, which is actually my favorite Francis Ford Coppola movie. And my 2nd favorite film of all time is Apocalypse Now. And Bram Stoker's Dracula. Oh yeah, Peggy Sue Got Married was another great one. But the 2 movies I didn't like of his were Megalopolis and Jack. which bugs me because I'm a huge Robin Williams fan and I did not like Jack. But getting back to the one I'm talking about with Francis Ford Coppola, this one has Keanu Reeves, which is the only bad performance in this film. Gary Oldman, which I think should have got an Oscar nomination for playing Dracula. Anthony Hopkins, Tom Waits, Winona Ryder, and this one is Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's my number 2 film I love watching during Halloween. And my number 1 film I like watching during Halloween is a 1978 classic with the same name as the holiday, with the killer Michael Myers starring Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. That is Halloween. Yes, Halloween is the greatest Halloween movie of all time, in my opinion, and my favorite horror film of all time. But yeah, so I decided, like I said, to talk during the Halloween about the spooky gore and how I think some movies work with gore and others don't. And I wanted to get my top 5 Halloween movies in there. Next year, I'll do what I did with my favorite movies of every year that I was born, and then my most overrated movies. And when I say overrated, that actually doesn't mean I hate all. There's some I hate, yes, but not all of them. Not all overrated movies are garbage, just they're not as excellent as they're portraying them to be, like Titanic. I do like Titanic, but it's not my favorite. It actually wasn't my top 10, but was in my top 5. Good Will Hunting was my favorite movie in 1997. I think the world knows that. But, yeah. Anyway, I will chat with you later. I'm glad to have the Halloween and talking about violence and some violence that works with the film and others that feels like it's gore porn. And I bet you guys probably have movies that you feel are gore porn also, that are just violent for the sake of trying to be shock and awe and disturb you. But like I do say, like for instance, Reservoir Dogs was a perfect example of using a very violent scene to work with the movie. But thank you very much. This is Corey Funk for Funk Film Reviews. You have yourselves a wonderful night. And I'm actually going to, I'm going to end it off with this. My first video usually was a birthday thing for people, as like picking their favorite movies from every year they were born. But next year I'm going to go review new movies, and I'll get on reviewing movies, but I'm going to review every film that was my favorite film from the years I was there. Like, it's going to be, like I said, 1981 was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and like all those other ones that go, like 91, Silence of the Lambs, which is another example of using violence to work the story to a perfect. Forgot to mention silent. Actually, no, I didn't. I mentioned my love for Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling. Favorite performance by a woman in a movie. But yeah, I'm going to start doing reviews of all my favorite movies of that year. So starting from 81, which will be the first one, will be Raiders of the Lost Ark, all the way to 2023. Which was my favorite film, was The Boy and the Heron by Hayao Miyazaki. And I'm going to do all those reviews. You guys have a wonderful night. This is Corey Funk for Funk's Film Reviews.